My name is Jessica Handy, and by day, I'm the executive director of Stand for Children Illinois. More importantly, I am a mom. I'm a foster mom, and I'm a foster grandma to young adults and children who exclusively went to or still go to public schools, pre-K through college. We value public education in my house. I'm joined today by three members of a working group that Stand for Children put together, of public education advocates. And we wanted to rapidly examine how Illinois might take the controversial federal education tax credit and turn it into funding to support evidence-based programs for students in need. Given that 90% of students attend public schools, statewide education advocates have a responsibility to try to design creative, innovative, values-based approaches to turn these funds into positive educational outcomes. We value educational equity for students who are furthest from privilege and justice. And in all honesty, the federal tax credit scholarship program wasn't created with those same values in mind. So the question of whether to opt in was not an obvious choice for us. But the question before us is not whether to create the program. It already exists. The question before us is whether Illinois students should be able to access scholarship funds. Illinois taxpayers can contribute to scholarship granting organizations. They can take the dollar for dollar tax credit regardless of whether Illinois opts in. However, opting in is the only way that scholarship funds become available to Illinois students. So with that, we are releasing this statement of values. I have 4 slides that I want to share with you to walk through what the program is, and then 3 working group members will share their perspectives, and then we are glad to take any questions. So the Federal Tax Credit Scholarship Program was created in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, passed on the 4th of July last year. It is already law. It is a $1,700 tax credit, dollar for dollar, that taxpayers in the United States are already eligible to take. So starting next year, taxpayers will be able to give $1,700 and get $1,700 back on their taxes, regardless of whether their state opts in, regardless of what state they live in. Scholarship granting organizations are the vehicle for this. They have to be a 501c3. They have to give to more than one school. They give scholarships that are restricted to students under 300% of the area median income. That's a very high threshold. About 90% of students are in families under 300% of area median income. And those scholarship granting organizations have to spend at least 90% of what they bring in on scholarships. Governors have until the end of this year to opt in if they want to participate next year. Now, the scholarship granting organization, or the tax credit program that we are most familiar with in Illinois, is probably Invest in Kids, because we had an Illinois scholarship or an Illinois tax credit program that sunset a couple of years ago. And these are really different programs. So I wanted to take a minute to walk through some of the differences. And the first, and maybe the biggest, is that Invest in Kids was only for private school tuition. The federal tax credit scholarship can be used for a broad ecosystem of programs. It can be used for private school tuition, but it can also be used for public school fees and services, and services for public school kids, like extracurriculars and after-school programs and summer camps. Family income limits for Invest in Kids is about 300% of federal poverty line, so about $100,000 family income limit for a family of 4. 300% of area and media income in the Chicago area is $360,000. So most kids would qualify for scholarships under this. It is not designed for kids in need. It is designed really for the majority of kids. The credit per taxpayer is another really big difference. Invest in Kids offered a 75% credit up to $1 million. So this was a question of fundraising from people that had up to $1 million. This was not fundraising from middle class everyday people. This was fundraising from people that actually had a lot of wealth. But the federal tax credit scholarship, you can only bring in $1,700 per person. That's the maximum tax credit. So this is not about getting to a few people who can give a big check. This is about getting to middle class people. This is about normalizing and systemizing how people can donate. And polling shows that 3-to-1, people prefer to give to public school scholarship granting organizations over private school scholarship granting organizations. So there's a lot of potential there. The program cost for Invest in Kids, it couldn't cost more than $75 million. There was an upper cap, but the federal government put no upper cap on this. So it could be, if everyone in Illinois donates, that's a $6 billion potential. There's no way everybody will, but people are looking at different figures for, if how many people donate, how many resources we can get. A lot of people are thinking of this as really a fourth funding stream for our public schools. Scholarship granting organizations in the Invest in Kids era, there were 8 of them. They gave 10,000 scholarships annually. The federal tax credit scholarship program, we are expecting many scholarship granting organizations, like hundreds of scholarship granting organizations. And we know of many national and multi-state ones that are already in the works. So next, I want to share a little bit about what it could pay for public schools. And I want to just say this is not how we would have designed this. This is not easy. This will be burdensome. It will also be worth it if we can figure out how to do it to really generate these resources. So as I'm talking about these, I don't want to oversimplify or make it seem like this is, an easy feat. It is something that is going to take work, and it's going to take partnership from a lot of entities to make this happen. But I think we owe it to our kids to do that. If 2.5% of Illinois taxpayers donate, that would bring in $150 million. $150 million would be enough to cover that CPS budget deficit that we're talking about right now. One way that they could do this, they could generate, because obviously it's not money that's going to go to plug a budget deficit or money that's going to go to, hire teachers. It's money that's going to scholarships for students. So that's why this would be a bit of a convoluted process. But hear me out. You impose a new technology fee. A scholarship granting organization exists to fundraise and cover that fee for all eligible students. That would be enough to free up $150 million that could then be used to plug a budget deficit. These sorts of creative solutions are what we need to be thinking about now. If 10% of our taxpayers donate, it would generate $600 million, and that would be enough to fund high dosage literacy tutoring for every public school student in grades 1 through 3 who's not yet proficient in reading. If 25% of people donate, that would generate $1.5 billion. That would be enough to bring in $2,700 for every public high school student for early college coursework and or career training programs and equipment fees. And if 50% of our taxpayers donate, we could fund all of that. The key, though, to all of this is to have a scholarship granting organization that exists to pay for it. And I want to point out 3 of them that we know are in the works now to support public school students. The first is Education Superhighway. This is a group that's working nationally in multi-states. Every state that opts in, they want to serve. Every state that doesn't opt in, they want to encourage those taxpayers to still donate to them. Scholarships would go to provide evidence-based literacy tutoring to first graders that are below reading level in public schools. Alliance SGO is a new organization started by a downstate Illinois superintendent and his fellow educators. They wanted to make sure Illinois wasn't left out if we did opt in, and they wanted to make sure public schools had an entity that was ready to go. They are also willing to partner with schools across Illinois and schools nationally to serve as their scholarship granting organization. And then finally, when you think about who is a logical entity to become a scholarship granting organization, a lot of times it is the public school foundation that already exists. And the National Association of Education Foundations has recently kind of changed its charter so that public school foundation members can become a chapter under their national scholarship granting organization. So if a public school foundation doesn't want to deal with, the administrative overhead and the, getting their own software and other sorts of economies of scale, they can join with the National Association of Education Foundations to do that. If they want to create their own scholarship granting organization, the National Association of Education Foundations is also creating a toolkit to help affiliates build their own. And I would like to turn it over now to Andy Davis, who's a member of our working group, and he will introduce himself and share some of his background and his rationale for supporting opt-in.
Thank you, Jessica. My name is Andy Davis, and I'm a lifelong resident of Chicago. I have 4 children. They've attended both public and private schools. For the last 20 years, I've been helping Illinois students pay for post-secondary education. First as executive director of ISAC, the state student financial aid agency. Now as CEO of the Education Equity Fund, a not-for-profit organization that helps teachers pay for graduate education so that they may pursue school leadership positions. Across those 20 years, one fact has remained consistent. There are always more students that need money than there is money to support them. Last year, the United States Congress threw us a curveball. The Federal Scholarship Tax Credit Program allows Illinois federal taxpayers, along with taxpayers in other states, to take dollar-for-dollar tax credits for contributions to scholarship granting organizations. Those SGOs can be established to support students at any school, public or private. And under the law as it stands, Illinois taxpayers are already allowed to make contributions, but they will not be able to make those contributions to Illinois students unless our governor chooses to opt in to the program. We estimate, as Jessica said, that Illinois taxpayers may be able to contribute over $1 billion of new money to students in need. But again, not to Illinois students unless the governor opts in. There's an old joke told by economists about economists. It involves 2 economists walking down the street when one spots a $20 bill on the sidewalk. The first one to spy it says to the other, "Why don't you pick it up?" The second one says, "I am a believer in efficient markets. If that were really a $20 bill, someone else would have grabbed it." Well, I believe Illinois has a $1 billion bill laying on the sidewalk in front of us. And if we do not pick it up and give it to our Illinois students, then the students in other states stand to go to school with Illinois taxpayers' money. And if we let that happen, we should be ashamed. Thanks very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Smithovis with CS for IL Action. We're a nonprofit which advocates for equitable computer science programs statewide. I will note I'm also a parent of 2 public school graduates. This year, the state reduced the budget for digital equity funding by 50% from $3 million to $1.5 million for all 853 school districts in Illinois. That amounts to less than $2,000 per district. Combined with an already acute shortage of qualified computer science educators, this puts Illinois further behind other states in giving students access to world-class opportunities. Opting into the new federal tax credit scholarships gives families another option in providing their kids access to tutoring and other after-school enrichment programs. Schools could use the funding to upgrade existing labs, create workforce development courses in this age of AI, or enroll them in an advanced coding boot camp. All of these options will require partnerships among schools, parents, scholarship granting organizations, and program providers, which is another reason why opting in sooner rather than later is especially important. These programs may not have been the original intent of the authors of the law, but Illinois owes it to our students to think creatively and intentionally to maximize these sorts of opportunities. And now I'd like to introduce you to our final speaker, Katie Scullion.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, my name is Katie Scullion, and I've worked for 2 decades to use my business background to scale up education services for children. And I passionately believe in doing everything we can to support public schools. So to summarize what my colleagues have said, this is an unusually enormous, unprecedented new funding stream. We believe many Illinois residents will be excited to learn that on January 1st, they can send $1,700 to educators rather than to the IRS. But we also believe they'll be furious if they can't use that money, send that money to Illinois educators and children. So we're sounding a call to action to public school administrators, educators, specialists, after school and summer programs, vocational trainers, technology providers, advocates, families. We need you to call Governor Pritzker and tell him your plans for deploying these funds for the benefit of all children. So last week I met with Education Superhighway. That was the first organization on the last slide there that Jessica introduced. So they are a nonprofit, and they show a detailed business plan to use these funds. Their mission is to reach 1.7 million first graders in the US who are below grade level in foundational reading skills. The high impact tutoring they do is both proven and scalable. They are already at work in the 30 states whose governors have opted in. They're at work setting up the background to collect the money and the partnerships to deliver it to proven high impact tutors. If Governor Pritzker opts in, their goal is to come to Illinois, and they have targeted 50,000 first graders in Illinois to serve. I believe, again, I'm going to restate, when Illinois residents are given the choice of sending $1,700 to the IRS or $1,700 to Illinois first graders, those first graders win every time. So I do want to acknowledge that there are public school advocates who are offended by the up for grabs nature of this tax credit. I am. It's not how I would have designed deploying federal funds, but that's the way it is. There's also an acknowledgement among all sides in this tax credit, debate, that affluent families and private school networks are ready to go to capture that money. But loose is how our federal government now works. Loose means those of us who have some values, vision, and planning for public school need to step in and apply our standards to how we use that money. So we urge Governor Pritzker to opt in as fast as possible. Illinois educators should say, here are our best ideas. Here's how we're going to make this work for our kids. So let's go with turning this billions per year opportunity into better outcomes for our kids, especially those who need it most. Thanks.
All right, there's a Q&A feature. If you haven't found it yet, you are welcome to ask any questions. I will start us off with the first question here, which is, what do you say to people who believe this is just another way to privatize education?
The simple numbers are the overwhelming number of students in Illinois are going to public schools. And if we allow the money to flow to them, significant majority of the dollars are certainly eligible to flow to public school students. And so sending money to public school students, it's weird that we think that that's a pathway to privatization, to send more money to public schools. So I think the simple facts of the matter are the money can go to public schools. It can go to private schools, but it certainly doesn't suggest they must go to either.
I also would like to just add, in developing, our policy position on this, with Stan, we met with researchers and people who have studied voucher programs that have been, active since the 1980s. This is not a voucher program. This is just a new funding stream. But if it becomes a voucher program and so, even more money goes to private school, more than currently goes to private schools, there is no research that says it has significantly harmed those left behind in public schools. And we're not so worried about the damage of the money being used for private schools. What we're worried about is that we're not ready to get this money for public school students, of which 90% of students are public school students.
So on a similar track, would you support limiting this program so that only public schools can participate? And I can go first with that, and I will just say the preview of guidance that we received from the Department of Treasury, we had originally wanted to wait and see the regulations before deciding, but they've taken way too long with the regulations, and so we feel like it's time to move. But they did give a preview of guidance in June, and governors will not have the power to do that. It will have to be if entities qualify under the federal definition of a scholarship granting organization, governors will not have the ability to restrict further kind of what kind of entity. So public and private will both be eligible to receive scholarships.
I also saw some experts say that, once this has been passed by the federal government, and so it's hard for Congress to retract money they've passed. So what will the next administration do? Eventually there will be another administration. And what if it were a Democrat administration? My understanding is some people think this funding stream would remain, but they might apply some restrictions, like to be used for public school students or to be used for public school students who need to go attend some services that they can't get in their own district, such as tutoring for dyslexia or special ed services, things like that.
Katie, this question I think is for you. Will these programs be accepting all students or only the targeted 50,000 students?
Oh, the education highway program that's targeting 50,000. Well, they have a very mission-driven organization to reach first graders who have scored not proficient when they enter first grade for first grade foundational skills. So that program, I think they're going to be strict and want that program to go, to apply there. But if your child doesn't if your child already has foundational reading skills, what you should do is go apply to another student granting organization and get your oh my gosh, I could think of so many things I'd want to do. There's for enrichment services, for math tutoring, for summer programs, for technology. There's so many ways, but I personally am going to support Education Highway and having a strict standard on who they're targeting and why, because that's how you have impact.
But that actually shows the key is having a scholarship granting organization that is willing to do the thing that we want it to do. So if we don't have scholarship granting organizations that are stood up to support, just because the federal government says you can only give scholarships to students below 300% of area median income, that doesn't mean that a scholarship granting organization can't say, we are not giving to 90% of kids. We are giving to kids who are, below the federal poverty line, or we are giving only to foster kids, or we are giving only to, whatever the thing is that the scholarship granting organization exists to do. They can limit in that way. And it's not easy to become a scholarship granting organization. It's gonna take some work to get those stood up, which is why we think opting in sooner rather than later really makes sense. What is the current infrastructure for public schools already having foundations that can grant these scholarships across Illinois? And what steps can Illinois take to make sure public schools have equitable access to tax credit money? Anyone want to take the first crack at that?
I spoke to the superintendent in Vienna who is working on this SGO to serve public school districts who want to use this locally for their taxpayers in town to donate directly to kids in their town. And he was quite honest that it's an administrative burden, but here's what he said: that's what we do. Administrative burden is what it is to be a public school superintendent. There's a lot of administrative work going into qualifying students and scheduling and everything. So he said he's prepared to do it, but he's already started working on it. I'm more worried for the districts who have not started working on it. And January 1st, they aren't ready to qualify the students, make the partnerships, and figure out how they're going to deploy the funds in their own school.
Yeah, to the second part of that question, what steps can Illinois take to make sure public schools have equitable access to the tax credit money? We are going to come out with some more specific recommendations of ways that we think Illinois can really maximize use of this program, probably for ways that the program was not originally designed to be used. But we think there are innovative and creative ways that public schools can really make sure that they have equitable access. One thing, if there's a public school that partners with an SGO, it's got to be multiple public schools. An SGO can't serve just one school. So a community where there's a public school foundation that maybe wants to convert, become an SGO, and that school systemizes the donation process through its payroll, which all of the major payroll companies are aware of this and are working on this. So they can deduct $70 per paycheck year round. And actually, it would just adjust, and we already have withholdings from our paychecks. So really, they wouldn't even feel any direct impact to their pocketbook. It would just adjust the withholdings, but they would be giving their $70 a paycheck to their community SGO that supports their public school. And if they really had their act together, they would work with their municipality and their park district and their large employers, and everybody would systemize this so that they all have an opportunity through a payroll deduction to support their public school SGO. Those are the sorts of things that we hope to see so that public schools are really able to capitalize on that. It's only $1,700 per person. It's got to be a lot of people. Someone asks for Chicago specifically, would the CPS Children First Fund be serve as its SGO? And I don't know the answer to that, but I suspect there will be many Chicago serving SGOs. I don't know if that one specifically will become one. Do Illinois taxpayer dollars stay within their district or go into a statewide pot? I can take a crack at that, or go ahead, Katie.
No. Each taxpayer can donate to whatever SGO you wish. So I will talk about me. When on January 1st, if Illinois hasn't opted in, I've already chosen that I will donate to, I will be choosing that I will donate to Education Superhighway. I have looked at their program. I believe it's proven, evidence-based, and I believe they have a real strong management team who will get that money to the right kids in Mississippi, in Alabama, wherever. I'd rather it go there right now in their hands than to the IRS. So it's up. This is what they mean by kind of like the free market, up for grabs bit. Every taxpayer has to choose. And I'm going to add one more thing. That puts the burden on the education officials in Illinois to influence us. It puts the burden on SGOs to do a campaign that helps you understand what your options are and helps you make the decision that aligns with your values. Pick your favorite cause. If it's summer camps, if it's kids with dyslexia, maybe it is your private school, but hopefully we will reach people so they are educated and informed and know how to select the SGO that aligns with their values.
Is ISB engaged in any way to support districts? I don't think they are yet. I think if the governor opts in, I think ISB would definitely get engaged. It is a unilateral decision of the governor. Some states, their legislature has also passed a bill to support opt-in or to compel the governor to opt in, but it is really one person's decision. It's the governor. Do we know anything yet about accountability of this program? This is a really good question. What are the reporting requirements on SGOs to the public and accounting of the spending of the funds, the outcomes, etc.? Anyone want to?
I think you should go for that.
Well, one thing we do know is
Andy.
the Attorney General of the state already regulates 501c3. So to the extent that these SGOs are 501c3s, there's already a long litany of regulation and an apparatus for applying it from the AG's office.
This was a disappointment for me that there wasn't more of a lens on using these programs using these dollars on evidence-based programs. That really wasn't their lens. And I think there are a few things that the state can do to really apply that lens, even though the federal program is rather silent on it. And one of them is, like Andy said, like the regulation of 501c3s at the state level. Another one is that in the preview of guidance, states will be able to do audits of these programs. States will be required. I mean, they will be required to do audits of these programs. Now, I think the audit will look at the accounting side, the spending side, making sure kids aren't getting double counted for scholarships, things like that. I don't think the audit will do that second lens of making sure that it's an evidence-based program and that student outcomes are there. But I certainly think that Illinois should do something about that to measure that and provide transparency around that, even if it is not a federal requirement. That concludes the questions in the Q&A. If anybody has additional questions, we are available throughout the day and week to talk more. And I will say we are working now on a next step of coming up with more specific recommendations, and we'll have those to roll out shortly. There is one more question, which is whether the National Governors Association has taken a position, and I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so.
In the national governors may not have, but the majority of the governors have opted in.
Yeah, all of the Republican governors have opted in. And then as far as Democrat governors, Colorado's governor is a Democrat, and he's been the most vocal Democratic governor, saying we need to opt in. It would be a mistake to leave this money on the table. New York's governor has indicated that she plans to opt in. And then 3 states that have Democratic governors and Republican legislatures had the legislature pass a bill requiring the governor to opt in. So those are Kansas, Kentucky, and North Carolina. So those are the 5 Democratic states that have opted in. Oregon, Wisconsin, and Minnesota have said they will not opt in. And then the rest of the Democratic states are waiting. I don't know if they're waiting for the election. I don't know if they're waiting for the regulations, but we don't know yet. And a lot of those states are in an undecided place right now. All right. So with that, I think we will conclude. We really appreciate your attendance, and Karina has put her contact information in chat. So please reach out if you have any additional questions for us, and everybody have a great day.